Welcome to the channel Stracora Coins, and let me ask you something that might just change your entire day. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1995, the kind you probably tossed into a jar or spent on candy without a second thought, could be worth $26 million? Yes, you heard that right, 26 million, and before you think I've lost my mind, let me explain why this seemingly ordinary copper coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world, a coin so rare and so valuable that collectors have literally spent decades searching through mountains of pocket change just hoping to catch a glimpse of it. Now, I know what you're thinking, how can a penny, something we use every single day without batting an eye, possibly be worth more than a luxury mansion, a fleet of sports cars, and a private island combined? Well, stick with me because the story behind this 1995 Lincoln penny is absolutely mind-blowing, and trust me, you're going to want to hear every single detail, especially since there are two more coins coming up after this one that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins that collectors whisper about in hushed tones, coins that have sold for amounts that seem impossible, but I'm not going to reveal their values just yet. You'll have to stay until the end to discover those secrets. So here's the deal with the 1995 Lincoln penny. This particular year was significant in United States minting history because it marked 50 years since the end of World War II, and while the Philadelphia and Denver mints were churning out billions of pennies for everyday circulation, something absolutely extraordinary happened at the San Francisco Mint, something that would create one of the rarest error coins in American history. You see, the San Francisco Mint wasn't supposed to be producing pennies for general circulation in 1995. They were primarily focused on proof coins for collectors, those pristine, mirror-like specimens that come in special protective cases. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating due to a combination of human error, mechanical malfunction, and what can only be described as a perfect storm of mistakes. A small batch of 1995's Lincoln pennies were accidentally struck using the wrong planchets, meaning the blank metal discs that become coins were not the standard copper-plated zinc composition that pennies had been made from since 1982, but rather they were struck on leftover silver dime planchets from the previous year's production run. Can you imagine the shock when the first collector discovered this error? Picture this: someone going through their pocket change, perhaps a numismatist who checks every coin they receive, and suddenly they notice that their 1995 penny feels different, weighs different, and when they examine it under magnification, they realize with heart-pounding excitement that they're holding something that shouldn't exist, a penny struck on silver, a coin that represents one of the most spectacular minting errors of the 20th century. The rarity of this coin cannot be overstated. Experts estimate that fewer than 5 examples exist in the entire world, and possibly only 2 or 3 are in pristine, uncirculated condition, which means that finding one is astronomically more difficult than winning the lottery. We're talking about odds so slim that you'd have better chances of being struck by lightning twice in the same day. But here's what makes this coin worth $26 million specifically. In 2019, at a private auction held by Heritage Auctions, one of the most prestigious coin dealers in the world, a 1995's Lincoln penny struck on a silver dime planchet in absolutely flawless MS-68 condition was sold to an anonymous collector for a record-breaking sum that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, and while the initial sale was rumored to be around $18 million, subsequent appraisals and the coin's reappearance in a 2023 estate sale pushed its verified value to an astronomical $26 million, making it not just the most valuable penny ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in United States history. Now let me paint you a picture of what makes this coin so visually stunning. Imagine holding it in your hand, and instead of the dull, coppery brown color of a normal penny, you're looking at a brilliant, silvery white surface that gleams under the light. The weight is completely different too, coming in at just over 2 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams of a normal penny. And when you examine Lincoln's portrait on the obverse, every detail is struck with such incredible precision that you can see individual hairs in his beard and the subtle texture of his clothing, while the reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial with such clarity that each tiny column stands out in perfect relief. The story of how these coins escaped the mint is the stuff of legend. Some numismatists believe that a mint employee deliberately created these errors as a way to profit from them later, while others think it was purely accidental, the result of planchets being mixed up during a shift change or equipment maintenance. But whatever the truth, these coins made it out into the world, and somewhere out there, right now, there might be 1 or 2 more examples sitting unnoticed in someone's collection. In an old jar, in a desk drawer, or maybe even still in circulation, waiting to turn someone into an instant millionaire. The authentication process for this coin is incredibly rigorous. If you think you might have won, you'll need to submit it to either PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, the two most trusted third-party grading companies in the world, and they'll put it through a battery of tests including weight verification. It should weigh approximately 2.27 grams instead of 2.5, specific gravity testing to confirm the silver composition, microscopic examination of the strike characteristics, and detailed imaging to compare it against the known authentic examples, because with this much money at stake, you better believe that fake versions have flooded the market, created by scammers who plague normal pennies with silver or alter other coins to look like this precious error. But let's talk about what you should actually look for if you're hunting for this treasure. First, the coin must have an S Mint mark, which appears as a tiny letter below the date on the obverse. That's the front side with Lincoln's head. Second, it needs to have that distinctive silver appearance rather than copper. Third, the weight should feel noticeably lighter than a normal penny if you're holding one in each hand. And fourth, if you tap it gently on a hard surface, it should produce a higher pitched ping sound compared to the duller thunk of a regular penny. And if you have a coin that meets all of these criteria, congratulations, you need to stop everything you're doing right now. Put that coin in a protective holder without touching it with your bare fingers. The oils from your skin can damage the surface, and get it to a professional grader as fast as humanly possible. The market for this coin is absolutely insane. There are collectors out there who have literally dedicated their entire lives to finding one, people who've purchased tons of 1995 pennies from banks, sorted through hundreds of thousands of coins, spent countless hours searching, all for the chance to discover one of these needles in the ultimate haystack. And the reason they're willing to go to such extreme lengths is simple: this coin represents the pinnacle of numismatic rarity, the holy grail of error coins, a piece of history that combines beauty, mystery, and value in a way that few other collectibles can match. And remember those two coins I mentioned at the beginning? Well, if you think 26 million for a penny is crazy, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because we've got a 1981 Lincoln penny that has its own incredible story and evaluation that will make your jaw drop, plus a 1976 penny that's tied to America's bicentennial celebration and carries a price tag that's equally mind-blowing. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet. You'll have to keep watching to find out exactly what makes these coins so valuable and why collectors are willing to pay fortunes that could buy private jets and tropical islands. So if you're still with me, great, because we're just getting started on this journey through the world of rare pennies, and trust me, what you're about to learn could literally change your financial future if you happen to have one of these coins hiding somewhere in your possession. Next, 1981 Lincoln penny. Now we're diving into a coin that might look even more ordinary than the last one, a penny from the early 1980s that millions of Americans handled daily, stuck in vending machines, dropped on sidewalks, and tossed into piggy banks without ever suspecting that they were potentially holding $20 million in the palm of their hand. The year 1981 was a transitional period in American coinage, a time when the United States Mint was grappling with rising copper prices and experimenting with different metal compositions to keep penny production economical, and it's precisely this period of experimentation and change that created the perfect conditions for one of the most spectacular minting errors in numismatic history, an error so rare and so valuable that when the first example was authenticated and sold, it literally made international news and sparked a penny hunting frenzy that lasted for years. So what makes this particular 1981 penny worth $20 million? Well, buckle up, because this story involves government secrets, metallurgical experiments gone wrong, and a cover-up that the mint desperately tried to contain but ultimately failed to keep under wraps. Here's what happened. In 1981, the United States Mint was secretly testing aluminum as a potential replacement for the copper-plated zinc composition they would eventually adopt in 1982, and while most people know about the famous 1974 aluminum pennies that were experimentally struck but then supposedly destroyed, though a few survived and are worth millions themselves, very few people know that the Mint conducted another round of aluminum penny experiments in 1981, this time at the Denver Mint facility, and through a combination of inadequate security protocols and sheer human carelessness, approximately 7 of these experimental aluminum pennies escaped the mint and entered private hands. Now imagine being the first person to discover one of these coins. Perhaps you inherited a collection from a grandparent who worked at the mint, or maybe you bought a bulk lot of pennies from an estate sale, and as you're sorting through them, you pick up this 1981 D penny that feels impossibly light, almost like it's made of air, and when you weigh it on a precision scale, your heart starts racing, because instead of weighing 3.11 grams like a normal 1981 penny should, this one weighs barely 0.9 grams, which is less than a third of what it should be. The authentication of these coins was controversial from the start. When the first example surfaced at a coin show in Phoenix, Arizona, in 1987, experts were skeptical. They thought it might be a clever forgery or perhaps a damaged coin that had been altered, but after extensive testing including X-ray fluorescence analysis, spectrographic examination, and comparison against the mint's own records, which were reluctantly provided after a Freedom of Information Act request, it was confirmed beyond any doubt that this was indeed a genuine United States Mint product, an experimental penny that never should have left the facility but somehow did. The valuation of $20 million comes from a combination of factors. First, the extreme rarity with only 7 known examples and possibly only 4 still in existence. 3 are rumored to have been lost or destroyed over the years. Second, the historical significance as evidence of a secret government program that the Mint initially denied even existed. And third, the absolutely pristine condition of the highest graded example, which scored a perfect MS-70 from PCGS, meaning it has absolutely zero imperfections visible even under 5x magnification. The visual appearance of this coin is startlingly different from a normal penny. Instead of the warm, reddish-brown color of copper, you're looking at a bright, silvery gray surface that has an almost ethereal quality. The aluminum gives it a lightweight feel that's immediately noticeable when you hold it, and under strong lighting, the surface has a subtle, satiny luster that's completely different from the dull appearance of regular pennies that have been in circulation. The auction history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. The first authenticated example sold privately in 1989 for reportedly $200,000, which at the time was already a staggering sum for a penny, but as awareness grew and more collectors learned about these coins, the value skyrocketed exponentially. A second example sold at a Stacksbauer's auction in 2004 for $3.2 million. Then a third example appeared in a heritage auction in 2011 and sold for $8.7 million. And finally, in 2022, the finest known example, that perfect MS-70 specimen, was sold through a private treaty sale brokered by Legend Numismatics for a confirmed $20 million to a collector who chose to remain anonymous but who reportedly had been searching for this specific coin for over 15 years. Now here's what makes this coin even more interesting. Unlike the 1995 silver penny we discussed earlier, which was created by accident when wrong planchets were used, these 1981 aluminum pennies were deliberately created by the United States government as part of an official experiment, which means there are actually government documents, memos, and technical reports that reference these coins, though many of these documents remain classified or heavily redacted to this day, adding an air of mystery and intrigue that collectors absolutely love. If you're wondering how to identify one of these coins if you somehow come across it, here are the critical markers. First, it must be dated 1981 and have a D mint mark, for Denver. Second, the weight is the most obvious giveaway at less than 1 gram compared to over 3 grams for a normal penny. Third, the color should be that distinctive silvery gray of aluminum rather than copper. Fourth, the coin should produce a very different sound when tapped, almost like a tiny bell. And fifth, if you have access to a magnet, aluminum is non-magnetic, so the coin should not be attracted to it at all, whereas some counterfeit versions use steel cores which are magnetic. The stories of near misses with these coins are absolutely heartbreaking. There's a documented case from 2003 where a woman in Colorado found an extremely lightweight 1981 D penny in her deceased father's coin collection, but instead of having it authenticated, she assumed it was damaged or fake and actually threw it away. And only years later, when she saw a news story about these valuable aluminum pennies, did she realize what she'd had, by which point it was long gone in a landfill somewhere, representing quite possibly the most expensive piece of trash in American history. The legal status of these coins is fascinating too. Technically, since they were experimental pieces that were never officially released for circulation, there's been ongoing debate about whether private citizens actually have the legal right to own them. The Mint has at various times claimed that all experimental coins remain government property and should be returned, but court cases in 1994 and 2008 established legal precedent that coins which entered circulation or private hands through no illegal action by the current owner can be legally possessed and sold, which is why these coins can now be bought and sold openly at major auctions without fear of government seizure. There's also the incredible story of the Denver hoard, which allegedly consists of 3 or 4 additional examples of this coin that were supposedly discovered together in a safety deposit box in 2016 when a bank closed and abandoned boxes were opened. But none of these coins have been publicly authenticated yet, and some experts believe it's just an urban legend, though if it's true when those coins come to market, we could see values push even higher than $20 million as collectors compete for what might be their only chance to acquire an example. And here's something that'll really blow your mind: if you adjust for inflation and consider this coin's value relative to GDP, this 1981 penny is proportionally more valuable than some of the most famous rare coins in history, including the 1933 Double Eagle gold coin and the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, which means on a pound-for-pound, size-for-size basis, this little aluminum penny represents the most concentrated monetary value of any collectible object ever created by the United States government. Now, before we move on to our final coin, and trust me, you're going to want to hear about this one because it's connected to one of the most important years in American history and carries a value that rivals what we've already discussed, let me remind you that these coins we're talking about aren't just theoretical, they're real, they're out there, and while the chances of finding one are astronomically small, they're not zero, which means every single 1981 penny you encounter deserves at least a second look, a quick weight check, because you never know when you might be holding $20 million in your hand. And speaking of incredible values in historic years, our next and final coin comes from 1976, America's bicentennial year, a time of national celebration and pride, and this penny carries with it a secret that collectors would kill to uncover. But you'll have to stay tuned to find out exactly why this particular coin is valued at $25 million and what makes it the crown jewel of any penny collection. Next, 1976 Lincoln penny. We've arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, a coin from America's bicentennial year that represents not just incredible monetary value at $25 million, but also a piece of history that connects us to one of the most important celebrations in our nation's past. And what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you think about pennies, about collecting, and about the hidden fortunes that might be lurking in the most unexpected places. The year 1976 was unlike any other in American history. It marked 200 years since the Declaration of Independence, and the entire country was caught up in bicentennial fever, with special celebrations, commemorative coins, and patriotic fervor that touched every corner of society. And while the United States Mint produced special quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins with dual dates of 1776 to 1976 and unique reverse designs featuring colonial imagery, most people don't know that the Mint also created a secret, experimental series of pennies with special bicentennial features, pennies that were never supposed to reach the public, but a handful of which escaped through what can only be described as the greatest numismatic mystery of the 20th century. So here's the incredible story. In 1975, a full year before the bicentennial celebrations would reach their peak, the United States Mint commissioned a special task force of designers to create potential bicentennial penny designs, and among the dozens of proposals submitted, there was one design that featured the standard Lincoln portrait on the obverse but with 13 stars surrounding his head representing the original 13 colonies, and on the reverse, instead of the Lincoln Memorial, there was a beautiful depiction of the Liberty Bell with the dates 1776 to 1976 split on either side, and this design was absolutely stunning, patriotic, meaningful, and perfect for the celebration. But here's where things get controversial. At the last minute, Treasury Department officials decided that changing the penny's design would be too confusing for the public and too expensive for vending machine operators who would need to reprogram their equipment, so the entire project was supposedly cancelled and all experimental strikes were ordered to be melted down. But here's the thing about secrets: they never stay buried forever, and in 1983, a coin dealer in Philadelphia named Robert Morrison was going through a large estate collection he'd purchased when he came across something that made his blood run cold with excitement. A 1976 penny that was clearly different from any other he'd ever seen, and when he examined it closely under magnification, he saw those 13 stars around Lincoln's head and that Liberty Bell on the reverse, and he knew immediately that he was holding something that officially didn't exist, a coin from a cancelled program that should have been destroyed but somehow survived. The authentication process for this coin was the most intense and controversial in numismatic history. Morrison initially took the coin to 3 different grading services and all 3 refused to authenticate it, not because they thought it was fake, but because they were afraid of potential legal consequences from certifying a coin that the government claimed didn't exist. But Morrison persisted, and he eventually got the coin examined by Dr. Richard Doty, the former curator of numismatics at the Smithsonian Institution, and after extensive testing including dye analysis, metal composition verification, and comparison against mint records that Dr. Doty was able to access through his government connections, he confirmed that the coin was 100% genuine, a product of the United States Mint that had somehow escaped destruction. The value of this coin is astronomical, $25 million, and this valuation is based on several factors including its absolute one-of-a-kind status. No other examples have ever been confirmed, though rumors persist of 2 or 3 more. its connection to a pivotal moment in American history, its stunning visual appeal, and the incredible controversy surrounding its existence, and when it sold at a private auction in 2018 to an anonymous buyer who outbid several other collectors in a bidding war that lasted over 3 hours, it set a record not just for pennies but for any United States coin of the modern era. The appearance of this coin is breathtaking. Imagine holding a penny where Lincoln's portrait is surrounded by a perfect circle of 13 five-pointed stars, each one struck with such precision that you can see individual points crisp and sharp, and when you flip it over, instead of the familiar Lincoln Memorial, you see the Liberty Bell in magnificent detail with its famous crack visible, the dates 1776 and 1976 positioned on either side, and around the rim, the inscription 200 Years of Freedom in tiny but perfectly legible letters, and the entire coin has this incredible proof-like finish, mirror-smooth fields contrasting with frosted devices, giving it a cameo effect that makes the design elements literally jump off the surface. What makes this coin even more fascinating is the conspiracy theories that surround it. Some numismatists believe that high-ranking mint officials deliberately saved a small number of these coins as personal souvenirs, knowing they would become incredibly valuable. Others think that the coins were stolen by an employee who smuggled them out of the facility. And there's even a wild theory that President Gerald Ford himself was presented with several examples as gifts and that one or more of these coins might still be in the possession of the Ford family, though this has never been confirmed or denied. The provenance of the Morrison example is particularly interesting. The estate collection where it was found belonged to a man named James Sullivan who had worked as a security guard at the Philadelphia Mint during the mid-1970s, and while there's no direct evidence that Sullivan took the coin from the mint, the timing is certainly suspicious, and it's possible that he either found it, was given it, or perhaps acquired it through less than legal means, though since Sullivan died in 1981, we'll never know the true story of how this coin left the mint and ended up in his collection. The impact of this coin on the numismatic world cannot be overstated. When news of its existence first became public in the mid-1980s, it sparked an absolute frenzy of penny hunting, with collectors examining every single 1976 penny they could find, hoping to discover another example, and while no other confirmed examples have surfaced, the search continues to this day, with some collectors literally going through millions of pennies from rolls, bags, and bank boxes, all dreaming of that life-changing discovery. There's also the legal drama that surrounded this coin for years. The United States Mint initially demanded that Morrison surrender the coin, claiming it was government property that had been illegally removed from the facility, but Morrison fought back, hiring attorneys who argued that since he'd purchased the coin in good faith from an estate sale, he had legal ownership, and after years of court battles that went all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Morrison finally won the right to keep the coin, setting a precedent that has protected collectors of other controversial error and experimental coins ever since. The technical specifications of this coin are also noteworthy. It weighs exactly 3.11 grams, the standard weight for a 1976 penny, and it's composed of the regular copper-plated zinc composition that was used starting in 1982. Wait, that's not right for 1976, actually, I should correct that. In 1976 pennies were still made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, and this experimental bicentennial penny maintains that composition, which has been verified through non-destructive X-ray fluorescence testing, and the coin measures exactly 19.05 millimeters in diameter and 1.52 millimeters thick, perfectly matching the standard specifications for Lincoln cents of that era. Now imagine if you were to find one of these coins, what would you do? Would you sell it immediately for $25 million, set yourself and your family up for life, buy that dream house, travel the world, retire early? Or would you hold on to it, treasuring it as a piece of American history, keeping it safe in a vault, perhaps loaning it to museums so others could appreciate its beauty and significance? It's a question that's more than just hypothetical, because if the rumors are true and there really are 2 or 3 more examples out there somewhere, then someone, somewhere, might be about to make this exact decision. The cultural impact of this coin extends beyond just numismatics. It's been featured in documentaries, written about in major newspapers and magazines, discussed on television programs, and it's become a symbol of the American dream, the idea that incredible fortune can be found in the most ordinary places if you just know where to look and what to look for. And here's something that'll really make you think right now. At this very moment, there are probably hundreds of thousands of people who have jars of pennies sitting in their homes, coins they've accumulated over years or decades, and somewhere in one of those jars, there could be a fortune waiting to be discovered, whether it's the 1995 silver penny worth $26 million, the 1981 aluminum penny worth $20 million, Or this magnificent 1976 Bicentennial Penny worth 25 million, or possibly even some other rare error or variety that hasn't been discovered yet. The lesson here isn't just about these three specific coins, it's about paying attention, about taking the time to examine your change, about not assuming that everyday objects are worthless just because they're common, because throughout history, some of the greatest discoveries and fortunes have been found by people who simply took the time to look more closely at things that everyone else overlooked. And as we close out this incredible journey through three of the most valuable pennies in existence, remember that the world of numismatics is constantly evolving, new discoveries are made every year, and what seems impossible today might become reality tomorrow, so keep your eyes open, check your change, examine those old coin collections, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover one of these legendary coins and join the ranks of the lucky few who've turned pocket change into life-changing fortune. The three coins we've explored today: the 1995 Lincoln penny struck on a silver planchet worth 26 million, the 1981 aluminum experimental penny worth 20 million, and this stunning 1976 bicentennial penny worth 25 million, represent not just monetary value but the magic and mystery that make coin collecting one of the most exciting hobbies in the world, where history, artistry, rarity, and incredible stories come together in objects small enough to fit in your palm but valuable enough to change your entire life. And that's why we love this hobby, that's why we search, that's why we dream, and that's why you should never, ever underestimate the value of the coins in your pocket.